Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. One of the most popular vegetables growing in the world, in fact, I think it's somewhere around 14th most popular vegetables growing, is one that you don't grow, you don't eat, and it's taro. Now, taro is a common name for Colocasias, or the other common name you know it as elephant ears. Now, the edible ones are not as great as the ornamental ones, of course, because we're not really eating them. And so they're more popular. In fact, this year, PC choice plants were Colocasias, and they had the big Hawaiian blues and several varieties of those, as well as the very dark, deep black or purple, depending on, I guess, your ability to see color. In my opinion, they're black, okay? Now, you're going to get leaves, usually very, very large. They can get as big as elephant ears almost, but that's the way it got its name, simply because of the shape and size. Now, they are plants that will give you a tropical look throughout your garden. So it's a very strong feature. It's very bold, very coarse textured. So you can't just go and throw it in just anywhere. You have to give it its respect that it demands. So you're going to work these in. Now, there are things that you should know. There are the esculenta varieties, which are normally diploids. Now, diploids are the most common ones. In fact, the more edible ones are actually diploids. The cultivated ones are actually more triploids, and this has got the number of sets of chromosomes. The two different sets don't go and interbreed. In other words, they just don't. And this is not uncommon with diploids and triploids. So you'll find that you'll probably be going with the triploids simply because they're usually a little more colorful. But if you're looking for size and you don't mind green or that bluey green, go with the esculenta and the diploids. You'll get much bigger leaves, etc. Now, secrets to growing them. I mean, let's be honest, these guys have been around for, about 30,000 years. So, and been growing as a food crop. Now, the breeding efforts started when they realized that gardening was coming on. So it was in the 20th century. We're talking the 1900s here. That, my century, when I was born, that, you can actually grow these and grow them as annuals or as houseplants. And there's a few secrets to growing them. First of all, they love moisture. They love nutrients, particularly from organic sources. And as a result, the more they get, the bigger the leaves, the bigger the plant, the faster they grow. Now, the esculenta varieties also have another feature. And even though they're potted up, they can actually grow in shallow bodies of water. Now, they will grow in shallow waters in much warmer areas, usually about zone 8 and 9. But up here in our northern climes, they're a marginal plant potted up for your pond to give you that look and that tropical look. But they can, on occasion, be allowed to go dormant, keep cool and dark for the winter, usually in a basement, and make sure they're kept a little on the dry side. The reason is they're susceptible to rot. So, when you're in these conditions while they're dormant, don't over-water them. And the other thing is that they like a pH of 5.5 to 7. That's pretty easy. That's basically peat moss range, modified peat moss range, up until neutral. So the normal garden soils in Niagara are around 6.5 to 6.8. And that means you don't have to really adjust the pH to grow the Colocasias or elephant ears. They do like humidity, but if they're in a low humidity, very hot climate, then you may have to give them a light shade. And that's important. You'll get a lot of burnt edges if they go a little dry, so don't do that. So moist, and in our climates, usually because particularly here in Niagara, we do have a thing called humidity. They should do very, very well in full sun. Best if you've got them facing east or south. I have seen them do quite well west. North is a little tricky. You may have to move them out from an area where they get a little more light, and certainly not under trees. Downsides to growing these? Well, there's one. When you're cleaning up the older leaves, now you have to understand that as they grow, they shed their old leaves, which dry up and don't look very attractive. You have to remove them. You can usually pull them off, cut them off, etc. But the juices of the cut pieces, a lot of people are very sensitive to the juice, which actually contains calcium oxalate. And so just be careful. Don't go and get it on your skin or near your eyes. Wear gloves or wash your hands soon after contact. Now, I so far have not had a problem, but it doesn't mean that things don't change as we get older. Our metabolisms change, so be careful as well. Most elephant ears are planted a little deeper as well. When planting a corm, it's usually 2 to 4 inches down, so you want to make sure that they are slightly buried. As they grow, and they are growing in the same conditions in the same pot, or even in the same spot in the garden, they have a tendency to push themselves up, and this starts to expose them, making them more susceptible to wind, sun, drought, and of course cold. So you may want to lift every few years, replant, divide. If you're going to do that, a lot of the varieties produce little cormules. These are little bulblets off of them, and they can be separated out and growing on. It may take several years to get the corms up to size to give you decent-sized plants. There are others in the group that do not form corms, but spread by rhizomes or stolons, which basically crawl across the ground, and where they root, they will grow up. They do become invasive in warmer climates, but it's not something that we really have to worry about here in Niagara. The other thing that you should know is that the triploids of the Colocasias, or elephant ears, are about half a zone hardier than the diploids. So if you're going to try to grow one and keep it out in the garden, rich, organic, well-drained soil, because they absolutely hate wet feet. You can, as they go dormant, pile leaves on them. The problem is it could keep them wet. So you've got to be able to keep them on the dry side and warm and very heavily insulated. It doesn't work very well here in this far north. Much farther south, yes, you'd probably get away with it in your garden. The people in Zone 7 might be able to keep them outdoors, but from here and in Niagara, basically 7A to 6B to 5 and above, you're going to want to bring them indoors. So grow them as a pot or sink them, bring them in before they get a chance to get frosted. If you're going to grow them as a houseplant, you may want to lift them from the original containers in late summer or even even into September, October, if we're having nice weather. Pot them into smaller pots, a little more controlled size. Reinvigorate the organic material in the soil. Let them grow on, reestablish themselves, and you can bring them in to your home as houseplants. When you do, you often will go and remove all the leaves except for the top 2 growing point leaves. This will size them down, and it makes them a little bit more manageable in the house. If you're going to put them in the house, you're going to more or less let them go dormant, as opposed to a good pot plant. Remember, our houses are very hot and dry. You're going to have a hard time with humidity, so keep the temperatures down. 45 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, optimum. Don't overwater. Appropriate container size. And it needs to get some light. And if it does, then you want to make sure that you do check the water. It won't be completely dormant. There are a lot of ones that, again, do not form tubers, particularly the dwarf ones. And these are the ones that you need to make sure that you grow as houseplants. So take a look. I know that I've sort of fallen in love with these simply because they are so tropical, so different, coarse in their texture, and they do come in a lot of different colors, whether it's colored stems, colored leaves. The back of the leaves can be different than the front of the leaves, and vice versa. So you've got all these different combinations on different varieties, but again, the big Hawaiian blues, and which are bluey gray greens, and of course the very dark purple black ones, which are my favorite personally. I'm going to try and overwinter these. I have not decided which method I'm going to do, but with frost coming this weekend, I think it'll be the time to bring them in. I've been able to keep them out as long as this, which is going to be, you're listening to this for November. I've put them in a place where they won't get frosted under cover, and let them sit there and still get light. And that's allowed me to keep them out there longer, but it means that now they're coming in, they're a little bigger as well. So we shall see how they do. So some will be in the garage, some will be in the basement. I just don't know what's going to work best. So maybe we'll find out. Give it a try. If you've got them, you've probably still got them in the garden, unless you've been heavily frosted, or even a little bit of snow, depending on where you are. And in that case, no. But if you're still ready to bring them in, they're still actively growing, have not been frosted, or only very lightly frosted, bring them in, try them. Use the 2 different methods, see what you get, and let's be honest, if they don't survive, compost them or make them go to the street, whichever way you want, and buy some new ones again for your garden next year. Try some other varieties, some newer varieties, some older, tougher varieties, anything to give you that different look in your garden next year. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.